Hello and welcome. I am Gauhar Raza and you are watching Eureka. When you think of wireless, you think of J.C. Bose in India, first-rate scientist which India produced long ago. And before Marconi, he could demonstrate that things can be done remotely. His experiment was published, but he did not demonstrate it as a science experiment. He wanted to impress upon the British Raj that first-rate science can be done in India. Technology can be developed in India itself. However, a lot of water has flown down the Ganges. We have first-rate scientists and technologists who are working in the area. Welcome, Dr. Bhaskar.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
I'm extremely thankful that you gave time to us. Your journey to become a communication engineer, electronics engineer, and then director of the institute where you studied initially has been written with a lot of twists and turns. You wanted to become a pilot, and then you became engineer. Was it a trauma when your mother said, no, you are not going to be a pilot?
No, I shouldn't say it was a trauma because I wasn't very clear about what I wanted to be, and it turned out that there were a couple of cousins who had joined the Air Force and they used to come by every now and then, and that seemed attractive to me. I had joined the NCC in school. But I think not only my mother, some of my friends also told me that you are doing well in studies and you should do something else. And I was an amenable kid, and I think once they all told me, I said, okay, that's fine. I was also apprehensive because I was very puny. I was barely 5 feet 3.5 inches when I came into the IIT, and weighing under 50 kilograms, 40 something. And in fact, I used to ask those cousins of mine, how will I manage? And they said, don't worry, we were also like that, and so on. So I was apprehensive nevertheless that, if I go there, because I've heard stories about what they do in NDA and so on. So I was a little apprehensive. So combined with all that, I said maybe it's a better idea for me not to.
Your father was in bank, so I don't know whether he had any touch with science and
No,
technology.
not much. I think these were.
When did you get interested in it?
No, I was just a good student. That's all. I think it was just a question. One of the top students in class. So I was just, and it was very clear to me that I was sort of interested in physics, chemistry, and so on, and not that much interested in accounts and so on. So that was very clear. And my dad never. Was
it
really
because
asked.
of the teachers?
Possibly. I think
you don't remember some teachers?
Well, I do remember them. I think they were very good. And I'm not saying, I really don't know. See, in those days, it was not, there was this 10+2 system was not there. So you didn't have to choose commerce in school. So I think I could have gone, it's not, I don't think there was any difference between, there was a commerce section and there was a science section, and all the good students always went to the science section.
Yes.
So that's
good
how
students never went to commerce.
Yeah, so that's how I migrated there. I don't think it was any well thought out process. And then they told me to, write IIT. So I started looking at the syllabus and so on. It looked interesting. So fortunately, in those days, this ISC the exams used to finish in December. So we had a 5-month hiatus between December and May. So I could actually prepare for the IIT exam. Otherwise, I hadn't even thought about it. So those 5 months I prepared, and then, it just happened that I got in.
When did you decide to do electronics?
So that, in the IIT system, you have to pick the branch. And so when I was suddenly asked to pick the branch, again, it was just based on very naive notions. So I felt that, being small and, not very maybe strong, I should not do mechanical engineering. As if, that was my notion of mechanical engineering in those days. And now I see how wrong it was. Okay. And that, electronics was all new. Things were just coming out.
Civil again, you require some.
I never knew about civil engineering, actually. I only knew about mechanical and electronics. I never knew there was a branch called civil. And electronics, sounded fancy because things were just coming out, radios and all that, TV and so on. So I said, okay, let me do electronics.
Electronics was coming up as an area at that time because a major shift was happening from tubes to the micro.
And then ICs, yeah.
ICs and microelectronics. Did that impact you somewhere?
I was not aware enough in school at the time. But once I joined the electronics stream here in those 5 years, of course, I became fully aware. And then there was some more well thought out plan to what I did. Before that, it was just based on all kinds of simple, naive ideas.
And when did you get interested in wireless?
Yeah, so when I was doing my electronics here in the 5 years, there were of course teachers here who are still fresh in my mind, who are role models and who were sort of hit you between the eyes when you went into the class, and there were.
Do you remember some role
Oh yeah,
models?
very much. Yeah, there was Professor V.G.K. Murthy, then there was Professor Antony Reddy, there was Professor Radhakrishna Rao, Professor Venkat Rao. These were the people who really,
Very big names,
still
even today.
still in my mind fresh, their classes and so on. And so in fact I had never thought of a career in academia. I didn't know that time that there's an academic career, that you can do research and all that. I hadn't known. I became aware once I was here in the third or fourth year, and I was just thinking of taking a job and going somewhere, and because that's what my dad had done, so that seemed to be the thing to do. Then one of them told me, look, why don't you think of you seem to have some, seem to have a personality that suits academics. Why don't you think of go for higher studies, go abroad? I said, wow, who'll pay for it? They said, no, they'll give you scholarship. So I learned that you can actually go abroad on a scholarship. And I remember going and telling my dad that, and he wasn't convinced at all. He called one of my friends and said, is it correct? But I can't see how anybody will pay him to go and study. Okay. So only then he allowed me to apply. And so then they sort of put the idea into my head that I should go into academics. So I said, fine, that seems like a good route. Then when it came to actually applying, I realized that I have to tell the professors who I'm writing to that which area I'm interested in. So I didn't know. The teachers.
By this time, you were not aware of.
In the fourth, I was aware of wireless.
Upcoming area of
I was
wireless
aware.
technology.
But what happens usually
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
I have to take a break. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back. Welcome back. Dr. Bhaskar, we were discussing that you were not really aware, even in the IIT, you didn't decide that you wanted to do wireless and wanted to progress in that area. And you suddenly had to, because you had to apply for a scholarship, you had to write something there. So you wrote that. But did you find interest in that area?
Yeah. So actually, I didn't write wireless. Let me back a little bit. So I actually chose the area of communications.
Okay.
And that was not one of the areas in which we were taught a lot in the IIT at that time. The professors who really made an impact were in much more areas that were much more mature and not that new, well-developed areas in those times. And naturally, because those were the ones that I understood well, I wanted to go in those areas. And some of them who were advising me and mentoring me to go into academics told me that, look, this is not the thing. These are all going to get sort of wind down by the time you become 30 or 40. So
your control theory was becoming
not even control, but actually networks. The people, the networks and electrical circuits. These were the things that were taught very well to us. But they said, look, these are fine, but these are maturing. And why don't you go into? And also they said, the other thing they put an idea into my head at that time was not only should you do academics, but you should come back to the country. Okay, they sort of slowly.
You decided before going.
Yeah, I had decided. I had decided. So they were actually putting that idea into my head that, look, nobody is doing it, we need people, you should do that. And then they said, so by the time I applied in the final year, I had said I would do that. So then they said, look, why don't you go into an area where nobody is entering in India, why don't you choose something? And also they were in those days, they never expected the IITs to get equipped so well with the equipment and so on. They said, don't choose something that will require a lot of laboratory facilities and a lot of investment, because when you come back, you will find it very difficult. Choose something which is more pen and paper, and that kind of stuff. Don't choose this microelectronics, for example, because you may require huge laboratories which won't be available. Because now they are available, but they thought it won't be available. So they said, look, you're pretty good in mathematics, so why don't you go to these pen and paper type of things? Communications is a good area. Why don't you choose that? So again, just like my mother told me not to do, not to become, to drop the idea. When these people said, I said, fine, let me go into communications. So I wrote to everybody that I also went to the library, looked up communications. It looked okay to me. It's mathematics and all that. It looked like I could follow.
But it was a very difficult area.
Yeah, so I realized.
Modulation,
yeah,
frequency
but
modulation,
I figured that I could deal with it. Maths was was a fairly strong subject, so physics and maths. So I said I could. So I wrote that. When I went there, actually I did not do my PhD in wireless. Because the university I went to, the faculty member who I hired as my advisor, he was working in another new area, which is what led to what today you have as JPG and MP4 and all that, the video with compression. So I worked in that because that was also a new area and something I didn't know, and that was what he was doing. So
and it was very practical.
It was very practical, and I worked in that, and I did my PhD in that. But he had just come from Bell Labs. He had just joined academia when I went, actually. And he had worked on a multitude of things. He had worked on wireless, he had worked on modems. So when I was discussing with him about what I should do after my PhD, I told him that I'm going back. I need a little bit of experience before I go back because I want to pick up whatever I can. So I said,
But you wanted to be academic.
Yeah.
Why did you choose going to Bell Lab?
So I said I want to learn a few more things. This is one thing I've done in my PhD. I don't want to go back just with this. I want to learn something else, some other field. So he was very helpful in that. He understood what I wanted to do, and then he actually contacted his former colleagues in Bell Labs and in the wireless area, and told them this guy wants to learn wireless now. He's done his PhD in this. Actually, the people in Bell Labs in the video compression area were also asking me to join as a full-time employee, and because I knew the stuff. But I told them I don't want to do this.
You refused.
I said I don't want that because I want to learn something else, because I'm going back, I need to arm myself. So I said wireless, I don't know much, because even in that university in the US, I had one course, but that's about it. So he sent me to this former colleague of his who interviewed me, and I told him bluntly, look, I want to learn this stuff. I've not done research in this. I want to learn this stuff. This is all I know about it. And I'm willing to take a hit. You don't give me it doesn't matter if you don't take me as a full-time employee, give me a postdoctoral position is fine. So he gave me a postdoctoral position, and I joined his group, and there were all these stalwarts in wireless.
Nobody very easily says to no to Bell Laboratory. You had that.
Yeah, I was very clear. I wanted to come back. In fact, I never applied for a green card.
It was just because that you were
I had
clear
decided.
that you wanted
I
to
had
come
decided.
back.
I never had a second thought. I had decided. In fact, my advisor even asked me once more before I left the university, are you sure? I said, because he'd seen so many Indians, he had friends. I said, I'm very clear. So then all the people who mentored me in Bell Labs, because in Bell Labs what happened is when I went there, they realized what I was up to, and so actually they were very kind. There were 3 wireless stalwarts in our group. Each one of them mentored me for 6 months. I worked with each one of them for 6 months on a different problem in a different area, learned each one of those things, literally like a guru shishya thing, because they knew this is what I wanted. So 6 months with.
And you knew what they want from you?
Well, they just wanted me to work with them and produce some good work, produce a good paper. And we produced 1 paper each, and that was it.
You produced 3 papers?
Yeah, in 18 months.
In 18 months. And then you come back to India and immediately inducted in IIT?
I started corresponding with the people here, and so it turned out in those days they were not recruiting as regularly as they do now. So at the time I wanted to come back, they had not advertised. So I came as a visiting faculty member, took a little bit of a chance. Came as a visiting faculty member. Within a year the advertisement came, I applied. Fortunately I got selected, and then I joined the faculty.
We'll come back to that. Don't go anywhere. It's a short break. We'll come back. Welcome back. Dr. Bhaskar, when you came back to India, you joined as assistant professor and then climbed the ladder, as it is called, and you became dean in your institution where you had studied. So half of your life you have probably spent in IIT Delhi. And now,
IIT-Madras, actually.
IIT-Madras. And now you are director of the institute. You had a vision that India needs IITs, and the IITs should do fundamental basic research on the one end, and then also do things which are required to change the conditions of the common man. How much have you been able to translate into practice?
Yeah. So one of the things that sort of ambitions that I had after I joined the faculty.
Let me just add, IITs even today are seen as ivory towers, as isolated places, tapu, where you can't even touch or go in. So how are you trying to translate?
So I think one of the things that I'd said, one of the goals I had sort of as what would be really ambitions to achieve was, after I joined here, was not just to teach well, publish some papers and guide some students, but actually build some things, make some things, because I knew that in India in electronics we were not making much, and to tell you honestly, even in the US, you are such a part of such a big cog in such a big wheel, big machine, that you really don't, even if you do a Ph.D. or even I was in Bell Labs, I never really learned how to build anything. That division was somewhere else, where they actually built the wireless systems. So I wanted to learn how to do that, and I felt I could manage on my own now without any formal guidance. So I started taking on projects and so on, and so then I learned that you could actually work with a team and build products and do things that could be relevant to the country, to the industry here or to the people here and so on. And that initially, of course, I was confined to what I was learning and what I knew, which is wireless communications and telecom. And so some of us formed a group called the Telecom and Networking Group, Professor Junjunwala, myself, Professor Gonzalez, and we started building products with students. The students started forming companies. That time we didn't know the word incubation, and we started trying to take to the market and so on, try to get stuff. And our wireless local loop product was quite successful actually. BSNL deployed it in a big way. It was deployed in many other countries. So we actually got the confidence that we could actually build things that people would actually buy. Okay. We also understood where, how big the gaps are in the country when it comes to electronics, which are the buses we have missed, and all of that we understood. So we started participating, more and more in Delhi with ministries and so on. Once I became dean and director, I realized that this kind of
but before that, one of your papers became the basis for what is known as Wi-Fi today, and is
well, that's not
seen
quite,
everywhere.
No, that's not quite correct. The early papers in Bell Labs, you're right. The early work in Bell Labs finally led to Wi-Fi. But once I came back here, I left that stream of work. So
were you excited?
Yes, sure. I mean, when Wi-Fi came, I realized that it's coming from these things that we did in 1985. Yeah, sure.
So in India, whatever expertise you had gained in United States of America, you started applying here for making products. One of the products, would you like to talk about?
Yeah, so we made this thing called the Codec Wireless Local Loop. And it came from a line of thinking which now we apply it in all disciplines, and especially as director, I'm working with so many of my colleagues to do this, which is, what does it, what is it at that time? We said, why does India have only 8 million telephone lines? Why doesn't everybody have a telephone here? Even China has now, at that time, started expanding the telephone network in a big way. And the answer was very clear. At that time, it cost 30,000 rupees to lay a telephone wire into the ground for each individual. And at that investment, the kind of revenue you need to generate, most people couldn't afford to pay those kind of bills. So people never had telephones. Then we said, well, what else can you do? It does cost that much to lay cables on the ground. So then we said, okay, why not we use wireless to connect people, give telephones to people, not cell phones, because that had not yet come. It had come in the West, not yet come to India. It was very expensive. And so we said, why not use the same technology but build fixed telephone lines, except you don't have to lay wires. And we found that if you do it right, you could do it at a third of the price. You could do it at 10,000 rupees a line, and at 10,000 rupees, the amount of money billing you have to generate per month was such that a lot more, 100 million people in India would afford telephones, not 900 million as with cell phones today.
That is what you estimated at that time.
So we actually coined a slogan that we want to make India have 100 million lines. And we started building this wireless local loop, as it's called. No other major Western country needed it because they already had telephones. Okay. So we built that and we deployed it in BSNL. BSNL deployed about 500,000 lines. It was deployed abroad. But
that brought communication revolution in India.
Started the thing. But then what happened is the cellular revolution came, and we were not part of that because we were not in India equipped to make the miniature phones at that time. In fact, we actually in our group we did make one phone just to learn how to do it. But it's not something, looking back, it's not something you can do in an academic environment. And we did it, we have it in my room, it works. But that bus we were missing. And finally it came from abroad, of course. And cellular revolution brought prices down even further by a factor from 10,000 to a couple of thousand. And that's why 900 million people in India have phones now. But what we did at that time started the wireless telephone revolution.
Some people today would argue that a lot of independence was given to IITs, and that's why, and a lot of money was given to IITs. That's why they could do much better than other institutions. And there is evidence for that. Do you think that the money flow as well as the independence is under threat?
No, I don't think the independence is under threat. I think the IITs, from the time they were conceived, were always given academic independence. Nobody tells the IITs what to teach, how to teach it, when to change the curriculum and so on and so forth, how to pick the students, what to do. And that is still true. I don't think that is under threat at all. The way we select our faculty, we just select the best that are available. And when a faculty member teaches a course here, even as director, I do not have the authority to tell him or her what to teach, how to teach, whom to pass, whom to fail. It's their own decision, and we don't interfere. Okay, so that academic freedom which percolates down to the classroom is not under threat at all. Financially, I think, the IITs looking back have been given generous funds whenever funds are available at the government. When things are tight, sure, you feel the pulling back. There's no doubt about it. There was a huge cutback in the early 90s when India had the crisis, around 91. When there were good times in the 2005 period, we were given a lot of money. 2008 and so on. Now we are feeling a slight pulling back, but I think we have to go with the country. Everybody feels that.
Do you think that other institutions are coming up and they are demanding their due, and because of that?
No, I think India is a big country and we need lots of institutions of all kinds, and my feeling is they all need support and the pie has to grow. I mean, really, Indians cannot get out of their poverty unless the pie grows. And question is, of course, how fast is it growing? That's why people keep talking about growth rates. And when it grows fast, you can do things faster. When it grows slower, you have to trim your sails. There's no doubt about it.
And you also have to enlarge the base.
Yes.
In fact, 5 IITs couldn't do so.
Yeah, sure. This is a big country. This is like Europe, Every European country has a couple of IITs equivalent. So,
your contribution personally has been recognized by the country, has been recognized by peers, scientists, students. Which one of the recognition that you got you value most?
All the awards mean a lot, especially the first award that I got, I think recognition that I got from somebody outside the institute. The most valued ones are from your teachers. When a teacher calls you and says, I think you should become an academic and you should actually come back to this institute, it was like, okay,
that's an honor, great, yeah. Ultimate honor.
Ultimate honor. But beyond that, from outsiders, people who don't know you from Adam, the first award was Vasvik Award, and I was quite surprised because I had never realized somebody actually watching what I was doing. But finally, this year, recently, I was elevated to the fellowship of the IEEE. The IEEE is a very, very, cherished organization in the world. It's almost this single organization of that size and of the peer group of electrical engineers, and they don't award their fellowships easily. And what was most satisfying was, the citation says it's for developing wireless technology in India, and that means a lot to me because that's really what I set out to do when I came back, and I had no idea how to do it because till that day I had not built anything, and so I learned how to do it here. To that extent, it actually recognizes what I set out to do. But I also recognize that compared to somebody who built wireless technology of the latest variety in the US or the last 10 years or in Europe, this is a different thing. But in the context in which I did it and the context in which I wanted to do it so badly, it was the fact that has been recognized is very satisfying to me.
This is for the second time that I am listening this argument that most satisfactory thing is that you are being watched. Somebody knows your work and knows its worth. It's been wonderful. Would you like to sign off by giving a message to younger generation?
Yeah, I think the message that I'd like to give to the younger generation is that not worry about what we are getting for ourselves, but try to do something for others. Try to do. Just in my case, I was really focused on what can I do when I come back here? What can I do in India? What can I do to do something here that has not been done before? What can I do that will be actually not just that's not been done before, that can actually benefit in some way? I mean, I'm not an expert at it, but in some way, if it leaves a positive contribution, that will give me satisfaction. Once you have that kind of a focus, then it usually happens. And it could be any other kind of focus. In the current generation, might want to be an entrepreneur, might want to have a store, might want to create a company and generate employment for thousands, whatever it is. I think to have that kind of a focus on others rather than on oneself, this is the last part of the message. I think this combination always wins.
Have a focus in life, work for others, that will be the ultimate satisfaction in life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
May I, on your behalf, promise our viewers that you will be ready to answer any question that they have.
Absolutely.
If you have any question, comment or query, please do write to us at eurekarstv@gmail.com. We'll come back next week once again.